Okay, so we're still in Esther this morning. And if you remember last week, where we ended up was Xerxes sent the order out for all the Jews to be killed. If you remember our protagonist last week, it was Haman. And I told y'all last week, when you think of Haman, I want you to think of like Hitler. You know, he wants to commit genocide. He's easily swayed, easily manipulated. He's the Antichrist figure. And I don't want you to just see flesh and blood on here and wars. What I want you to see is there's a spiritual battle. There's a spiritual battle that's going on through this, because who wants to really wipe out the Jews? It's going to be Satan, because this is the time before Christ is born. If he can get rid of the Jews, and he can, I'm going to put it southernly, put a hurting on the Jewish people, he's going to do it. We see that continuously. So Haman is the Antichrist figure. Haman traces back to King Agag of the Amalekites. And if you remember, the first king of Israel was supposed to wipe out all the Amalekites, and he didn't do it. Some survived. And, you know, I told y'all this last week. When we question God, we're like, well, why do I have to go in and murder every man, woman, and child? That sounds harsh, because God knew this was coming. If they would have done what they were supposed to do, the Jews would have never been in this kind of predicament. All right? And it was divine justice for what they had done when the Jews came out of Egypt. If you remember what I told y'all last week, the Amalekites were kind of, if you would tend to think of it this way, like rogue bandits. They plundered what they could. They picked off the easy, the weak. So when they came out of Egypt, those who had fallen behind, the older, the ones who wasn't able to keep up, they would swoop in and they would attack them and take the bounty, I guess you would say. So Esther has not revealed that she's a Jew, if you remember. Mordecai has. And Haman is mad because Mordecai's not bowing to him. Okay? So Xerxes signs this order because Haman talked him into it. Hey, there's a people under you. They don't exactly fit in with us. I'm going to give you so much silver. Who looked it up last week? The silver. Was it you? Do you remember what it was? It was like 200 tons of silver or something like that. It was like astronomical amount. But he's not only going to kill the Jews, he's going to take all of their property. And that's going to come into the king's coffers, because they're fixing to go to war. And what do you have to have war? You need money. Okay? So this is all part of a good plan, he thinks. And so Xerxes is like, hey, it sounds good. I'm going to get money out of it. I'm going to get rid of these rebels out of all of this plan. So he signs it. It goes out to 127 provinces. Now, if you remember, the moment Xerxes signs this, it cannot be undone. That's the Medes and the Persian law. All right, so now I'm going to kind of go forward a little bit here. The decree, imperial law, it's going to go in different languages. It's going to go in administrative precision. Esther 3:12-15 describes the decree being written, sealed, and sent throughout the empire. This is part of the administrative process. Royal scribes draft the decree. It's written in every script and language of the empire, so nobody has an excuse that they don't know what the law is. It's sealed with the king's signet ring. Couriers deliver it to 127 provinces. Governors and satraps prepare for execution. Now, can you imagine being a governor of an area? You get this decree and you're like, oh wow, now I gotta kill all of the Jews in my territory. You could have more, you could have less, but you are given execution orders. Archaeology confirms actually what the Bible says. Multilingual decrees in Aramaic, Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian. So it was written in 4 languages. The use of signet rings for authentication. Courier systems capable of rapid empire-wide distribution, because this is a large empire at the time. bureaucratic precision, and legal enforcement. The trickle-down effect, I guess you would say. And then you have the irrevocable law. We first come across this when we were in Daniel chapter 6. It's confirmed there. It's also confirmed historically in the Elephantine Papyri and the Persian administrative records. So Esther 3:13 through 15, and the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews. No Jew can escape this. Okay? Both young and old, little children and women in one day. That's quite a feat to try to kill all these people in one day. Okay? Even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take the spoil of them for prey. The copy of the writing for the commandment to be given in every province was published unto all the people that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan or Susa, the palace, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. Now there are Jews in Susa because we know Mordecai's in Susa. He's got a role because he sits in the king's gate, and there's probably a lot more than him wondering, well, why does the king want to kill us? What'd we do? Yeah, I mean, it would be a little perplexing, but if you look at the king and Haman, they just sit down. They don't care. They're just going to have them a drink and they're not part of that, the order. They don't have anything to worry about. They're getting rid of these people and getting something out of it. All right, so Susa in confusion, social shock, and moral horror. If we got those orders today, what do you think would happen? Let's just say it come down from the top tier and it went out to every state. Hey, you've got to kill a certain people group in your state. Yeah. You would have a revolt, you would have rebels, you would probably have governors and being like, hey, I'm not going to do this, or sheriffs, or whoever the trickle-down effect went to. You would have protests, you would probably have assassinations. I mean, it would just be probably chaos, okay? So the city, I mean, I can see why it reacts the way that it does. It is a multicultural capital. It's got a lot of different people groups in there. Because if you remember Babylon didn't just conquer Israel. They conquered other nations, brought them in to assimilate them into their culture. So when Babylon's taken by the Medes and the Persians, you have a whole lot of different people groups. So they're Jews, Persians, Elamites, Babylonians, even Egyptians that are in the capital. It's the center of trade, administration, and diplomacy. And if I was one of these other people groups, it would kind of make me worry about my people group, because if you're going to exterminate one, well, what's keeping me off the gallows, you know? All right, let me keep going. A decree to annihilate an entire ethnic group would, of course, shock the population, create fear of political instability, raise questions about imperial justice. Questions lead to rebellion, right? Threaten the social order, because they know the day it's going to happen. And by them knowing the day that it's going to happen, everybody has time to kind of look down on that group, to distance themselves from that group. Well, if they're under this imperial order, I'm not going to do business with them, or I'm not going to do this with them. It's going to cause a lot of, tensions in the capital, but also throughout the entire kingdom. Here's the thing. The Jews actually knew their execution date and that Haman was going to take everything from them. They knew it. They set the date on the calendar. How else would he be afforded to pay enormous sums of silver? Where do you think he's getting the silver that he was going to pay the king and that he promised the king with? He's going to take it from them. So Nisan 13, 474 BC is actually April 6, 474 on the Gregorian calendar. If you ever study calendars, it's very complicated. I don't recommend it because there's so many of them. We're on the Gregorian calendar today, but Babylon had their own calendar. Israel has their own calendar. I mean, you know, like they have the Aztec calendar. There's all different kinds of calendars, but they can, you know, I guess you'd say translate it into the Gregorian calendar. So they had 11 months from when the decree was signed until the death day, I'm gonna call it, okay? They had 11 months. That's a really long time to know that death is hanging over your head. A really long time. All right? Chapter 3 reveals ancient hatred resurfacing. That's from Haman. There's a reason he's so angry and that he hated the Jews. Human authority becomes a tool of spiritual evil. I want you to pay attention to that one line. Human authority becomes the tool of spiritual evil. Can y'all not see that in our world today? How often, I mean, and I think back, and maybe I didn't pay attention when I was younger, but that seems to be increasing to me. Does it seem that way to y'all too? All right, a demonic plan disguised as political policy. Yeah, y'all are going, ooh, but that right there is what the Antichrist is going to do. It literally says in Scripture, the Antichrist will conquer by his policies. It's political, okay? The covenant people placed under existential threat, a divine plan already in motion through Esther and Mordecai. Again, God is silent, but the stage is set for his intervention. I want to tell y'all something. So I found this last night and I saved it to my phone. I hope I can get to it real quick for you, because I was like, oh, if it comes up, I'm going to share this with y'all this morning. So Esther is the only book of the Bible where the name of God is not mentioned, not even once. All right, but there's something in Esther. Esther, it says in Hebrew, means hidden. And of course, she was hidden, and God is hidden. And it says that his name is actually hidden in the book. And I was like, now, okay, you got my attention. Now, if you look at ancient Hebrew manuscripts, certain letters are written larger than the rest of the letters. And those large letters occur at every major turning point in the story. So when Queen Vashti is removed, if you look at the Hebrew letters, the big ones, it spells out Yahweh backwards. When Esther invites the king to her banquet, the last letter of each word spells out Yahweh forwards. When Haman plots Mordecai's death, the first letter of each word spells out Yahweh backwards again. And when Haman's downfall begins, the last letter of each word spells out Yahweh forwards again. We don't see that because none of us know Hebrew or whatever, but I find that interesting that his name is hidden, like at every time God either delivers or judges in this book. But yet his name's not outright mentioned, it's hidden, as is his province until the point where Esther is going to be obedient. Esther 4, 1 through 3. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes, and he put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city, and cried with a loud and bitter cry. And came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So, sackcloth and ashes, we've heard this before. Every time you see it in Scripture, it is a time of great lament. It is a time of great mourning. And Mordecai's not only mourning for himself, but for his people. When Xerxes gives Haman the signet ring, he hands him the authority to create law, the power to command the satraps, the ability to mobilize military forces, the right to enforce death sentences, the legal machinery of the empire. That's why it's just so devastating that this has happened. And when we're reading through this, it's important that you see, yes, Satan is at work, but God's already moving his people into places as well. All right, that's the providence of God. He knew this was going to happen. Purity regulations in the palaces, archaeology at Persepolis and Susa reveal purification basins near palace entrances, ritual washing stations, restricted zones marked by thresholds and guard posts, administrative tablets reinforcing purified personnel entering royal spaces. You could not come in sackcloth and ashes. It meant that you were, if you would in a sense say, they were dirty. You just can't do that. He couldn't even be at the king's gate in sackcloth and ashes. The purity laws of the palace and protocol were very strict. It could even put you under a death sentence if you went in the royal palace like that. So that's why it says Mordecai went out into the midst of the city. Why Mordecai is barred. The sackcloth and ashes, it symbolizes death, ruin, and ritual impurity. Allowing such garments inside the palace precincts would violate court decorum, ritual purity, and royal dignity. And then I'm thinking, but genocide didn't. You know, like you're looking at somebody on the outside, but how evil were they on the inside to do this? Archaeological texts from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Persia actually shows sackcloth was woven from coarse goat hair, intentionally abrasive, symbolizing humiliation, grief, and protest. Ashes represented mortality, ruin, and divine judgment. Public lamentation was a recognized form of political protest. Could you imagine if people protested politically like that today? Well, everybody get on your sackcloth and get your ashes. We're going to go protest today. They would look at you like you were nuts.
Well, it'd be better than burning down the city.
True, true.
Of course, how many people would go? I mean, who wants to wear abrasive sackcloth?
Right, right. And it wasn't just Israel that did it. You see it kind of carried over into these other cultures as well. So why Mordecai chooses the city center, it is because Susa's excavated layout reveals a central marketplace, administrative buildings, public posting area for decrees, high traffic zone for officials and citizens. He positions himself where the decree was likely posted. Officials would see him, news would spread rapidly. Esther's attendants, and this is the one I kind of lean towards, would hear of his actions. You know, somebody comes to Esther and they said, hey, there's this guy down here in the city and he's wearing sackcloth and ashes. Is that my Mordecai there? You know, he's trying to get her attention. Even he can't come, directly to her. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains, actually, they're the ones who came and told her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved. And she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. And I can get that too. I'm not going to take clothes to be more comfortable. You need to listen to what I'm saying here. This is part of his mourning. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend to her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. All right, so she didn't know why. She just knew he was in sackcloth and ashes, and that makes more sense of why she would send him clothes to put on. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened unto him, and the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. So Esther is, if you would see it this way, she's in isolation. The queen just can't go walking around just where she wants to. It's not like the movies or anything like that. She lives in luxury, but actually knows nothing of the decree. And it shows how isolated that she is, because the whole provinces know. It's in the town centers in 127 provinces, yet the queen does not know what's happening. So the harem complex at Susa was actually excavated by Delfoy, and I have no clue how to say his name. And it shows private residential quarters, enclosed courtyards, guarded entrances, limited access corridors, separate administrative rooms for the eunuchs. Queens lived in controlled environments, shielded from public affairs. That's just how it was back in those days. Information flow. In the harem, the news reached the queen through eunuchs, attendants, official messengers, and controlled channels. That's how she had to find out. And let me move to 8 through 10. He gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them. This is his message to Esther. He's not just saying, hey, this is going to happen. Here's the decree. I'm putting this in your hands, so she would know the depth of what they were willing to go through. To show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king, to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. He didn't know her people. She's not shown that yet. And Hatak come and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Now, I would say here the king's chamberlain is very trusted to go from Esther, to Mordecai back and forth with messages, because now he knows she's a Jew. That's something he could, use as leverage against her. All right. Again, Esther spoke unto Hatak and gave him a commandment unto Mordecai. So here's the back and forth. All the king's servant and the people of the king's provinces do know that whatsoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death. So you can't go into the inner court unless you are summoned to the inner court. If you just go walking into the inner court, it's a death sentence. And she's reminding Mordecai of this. Except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter. So if someone approached that wasn't called, he could spare their life if he extended the golden scepter. All right? It kind of does sound like a movie, doesn't it? Like a movie script. And it says, but I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape the king's house more than all the Jews. Like, don't think you're getting out of this. Now, the king's chamberlain already knows here. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. Pause. That shows Mordecai's faith. If you are not going to be the one to step up for your people, I do believe God's going to deliver us some other way. That shows his faith in God. Okay? But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? That's the part we always get to, right there. Because lots of times when we're in a moment, we don't know. Sometimes we never know. And sometimes we get a whole lot further down the road and we look back and we say, oh, I can see God at work. Sometimes it's hard to see God working in the moment. And even though God's not mentioned in the book of Esther, we look at it today. You know, we've been studying it for a few weeks and we're like, ooh, God's at work moving this person, and God's at work moving this person, and God's at work doing that. But in that moment, do you think they saw it? Probably not. But they had faith, because Mordecai's like, deliverance is going to come from somewhere else. If you don't do this, God will deliver. Okay? Then Esther bade them to return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat or drink 3 days. This is for her. This isn't for her people. This is for her, because she's going to make a petition to the king. Night or day, I also and my maidens will fast likewise. Now this shows that she had some kind of influence over her attendants that were with her, if they're willing to fast with her and for her.
Ashley, are they fasting to God?
They are fasting to God, but it's specifically for her to go before the king. So it won't be her death sentence. She'll at least get to say her piece to him.
So reading that, you would just assume that God is mentioned, like you said, but hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're fasting. It wouldn't just be fasting.
Right. Fasting, prayer, fasting and pray. Don't eat or drink. This is your focus.
Well, back then too, there was a purpose for fasting. It wasn't just lose weight or whatever.
Yeah.
There was a spiritual basis for that.
Right. Right. Now look at this next part. It says, I and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, she reminds him. And if I perish, I perish. She wasn't afraid of death. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Okay, so Mordecai's theological argument. Esther 4:13 and 14. Do not think you will escape. That's something very hard to hit somebody with. Don't think you're going to escape if you don't do this. Now, Mordecai warns Esther that her position will not protect her. We already know position won't protect the queen, because what happened to his first queen, right? The decree will reach the harem. They're not going to be, set apart from this. She is not insulated from danger. She's insulated from politics, but not danger. Relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house. She's in the inner court now, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in his royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to half the kingdom. He's willing to give her half the kingdom. That is a huge kingdom back then. That's a big offer. Now, if you remember with the first queen, he let all of his people talk him into, bring the queen before us so she can parade her beauty, which was not done. It's amazing right here. The first queen didn't want to come parade before him, and this queen comes unannounced.
That shows respect and effort for her.
Yeah, definitely.
She was different.
Yeah. It's just, and you would think if he was still the same man as he was back in chapter 1, she'd have been put away too. And that did not happen. And Esther answered If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. All right, y'all, this is some good thinking right here, because if she said her business out in front of all the men, like in chapter 1, all their business, the women are going to revolt and they're not going to listen to their husbands. If she did this out in front of all the men, there would have been an uproar. This is something that she needed to do in private, and she was wise enough to plan it this way.
And wait till a man's heart is still his belly, too.
You said it, Jana.
Is that not a true statement? Come on, if you want somebody, change their mind or want them to listen, feed them.
Then the king said, cause Haman to make haste that he may do as Esther has said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, my petition and my request, if I have found favor in thy sight, in the sight of the king, and if it may please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do this on the morrow as the king hath said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved from him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. I think some versions say wrath or wrath. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh, his wife. He needed somebody to join him in his anger against Mordecai. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, narcissist much, and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and the servants of the king. You don't think his friends knew? Or his wife knew? He just wanted to, toot his own horn here. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther, the queen, did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself. Like, nobody got invited to the banquet but me and the king. He sent himself up there. And tomorrow I am invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing. Like, I have all this. But you know what? The thorn in my side is Mordecai. That's what he's saying right here. So long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. And I'm sure he said it just like that in whatever language he was speaking at the time. Mordecai the Jew. I bet he said it just like that because he's bitter. This is ancient hatred going back to the Amalekites. Then said Zeresh his wife and all of his friends unto him, let the gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. Do y'all know how high this is? 75 feet high. But let me tell you why. If it's 75 feet high, most of the city can see it. He's trying to make an example out of Mordecai the Jew. Dun, dun, dun. Right? Somebody please do the sound effect. Exactly. This was a huge statement, and it's done by the man who's got the power of the king. He's got the king's ring. And that's where I'm going to leave y'all this week.
Come on.
No. We got to go to service.
Y'all are.
Will we know?